So welcome to the first safeguarding webinar for the North West England District. So I was going to say I'm so pleased to see so many of you here today, but as I can't see you, I'm going to simply say thank you for coming along today and giving up your valuable time on this sunny Saturday. I mean, it's certainly sunny here in Chorley, so I'm hoping it's sunny where you are. And especially giving up time when we have other key events going on in the world today. I've just been informed about the FA Cup final coming up later on, and Linda has been talking about Eurovision. So as well as our safeguarding webinar, there are a number of other key events going on in the world today that I'm sure some of you will be quite interested in. So safeguarding, as we all know, is of crucial importance. It's not just a legal requirement, it is a moral and theological imperative rooted in the teachings of many faiths, and Methodism is no different. Churches have a duty to create safe and inclusive environments where everyone can feel welcome and respected, regardless of their background or circumstances. It's about promoting a culture of care, respect, and protection for all members. Now, as we are all aware, NWED, as we like to call it, came into existence last September, and with that came the merging of the practices of 4 districts and their district safeguarding officers. We have spent the first part of this connectional year finding our feet and building the infrastructure for effective and consistent working practices across the district. And of course, safeguarding is no different. The DSOs and myself have spent time getting to know each other and embedding good working practices. We have a monthly team meeting and we have regular working together days, which provide an opportunity for spending the day together. We work, we discuss operational matters and share ideas and good practice. We also have regular meetings taking place at district level in each of the mission areas between the DSO, the mission area lead and the district chair, alongside briefings with circuit safeguarding officers and of course gatherings such as this one here today. We have also formulated the district safeguarding group, and I know that will be mentioned later on today, so I won't say anything else at this point on that. So we are grateful for the support of our churches and circuits in this time of embedding the new district. I don't think it was ever going to be easy, and I think some of us perhaps didn't quite realise how difficult it was going to be, just simply in terms of pulling together everything, trying to get to all the different working practices and find the best practice and creating new systems and processes, but we have all done it together. Many of you know that we are still in a period of transition when it comes to the safeguarding team because the DSOs are transferring to the connectional team from this coming September. They will be known as regional officers for safeguarding, and we are currently in the middle of the 2P process for that. More information will be shared nearer the time, but I think it's very, very important to say, rest assured that safeguarding will continue to be at the forefront of our work, and we will continue to work closely together to ensure proper practices and systems continue to be in place. So, you've heard enough from me. Without further ado, let's make a start with today's session.
Alison, if you could lead us in devotions, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with some familiar words from Luke 1. Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Saviour, for he has looked with favour on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him, from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever." The reason I share that this morning is because of the reflection of a survivor within the Methodist Church. And these are their words. They say, how power is reflected in the songs and hymns of the church is very important to me as a survivor of abuse. One of my favourite hymns is Tell Out My Soul, which is based on Mary's song, the Magnificat. It's a powerful song, sung by Mary, a powerless woman. Believing that God's purpose could be achieved through her, she became a woman of power. I believe God still calls women from the margins and empowers them to be agents of transformation in today's world. In the same way, God calls and empowers survivors. And as we work through the morning together, we'll hear the voices of many people, but also to reflect on those within our churches for whom the work you all do in safeguarding is so important in empowering them and allowing their voice to be heard. I'm going to read a short reflection from So What's the Story? And then I'm going to lead us in a prayer that was written by a survivor of abuse. So a reflection on our words. This morning, in the speaking and in the spaces, in the unknowing and in the silences, in the things untold or buried, bring wisdom, Holy Spirit. Bring time, Creator. Bring the word beyond words. And let's pray together. Loving God, as we spend time together in this safeguarding webinar, help us to remember that all are made in your image and are worthy of care and love and respect. When we have ignored the needs of the most vulnerable people, forgive us. When we have believed the powerful and disregarded the cries of the voiceless, forgive us. Help us to transform our churches into places of safety, places where we can tell stories, places where we can choose to show the scars of wounded bodies, wounded hearts, and wounded minds. Places where there is a possibility of healing and a willingness to stand together as pain bearers for one another. God, who bears all things, be with us. Amen.
So our first speaker today, I'll just share the screen so you can see what our programme is today. There we are. So our first speaker today is Linda Locke, who's looking at common mental health issues, what we at the church can do. So I'll now hand over to Linda Locke.
Hello, everyone. You're very welcome. I think I have to put a rider on today because it's mostly being led by the DSOs, and just as most people in every church that we have in our district and beyond, we are not mental health practitioners. We're not experts. What we're trying to do is just to spotlight and highlight issues that might be found within our churches, and just to give some food for thought and maybe some pointers of what we could do. So Jack, if we can have my first slide. Okay, to do that. It's a very quick quiz, and I'm just going to read through them one at a time, and maybe in your heads, or however you want to do this, try and think, how am I going to answer that? So the first one, on average, 1 in 4 people in church congregations will have mental ill health. That is by and large true. Certainly if we look at the data, which we'll see in the following slide in a second, it's approximately, with various studies carried out and backed up with data, that on average in the whole country, 1 in 4 people. Now, whether or not all of those people are appearing in churches is another question, but a quarter of the congregation could have mental ill health. And people with mental ill health can only be supported by experts.
Well, that's false because, we are supporting people within our churches. You might be supporting people at home or in your day-to-day work with your colleagues or wherever you are in life. So that is false. And the third one, first aid courses are for physical injuries only. We hear lots about we need trained first aiders within our churches. That one's false because there are mental health first aid courses, which I'll touch on later. Number 4, people with mental ill health could seek support at local church. Well, if you had mental ill health and you wanted to find somewhere where you could engage with people and have support and have understanding and most of all, love and caring, then of course you're going to seek out places such as local churches. This is a refuge for people, so that is true. And the last one, the average person worshipping in a church would be wary of offering support to a person with mental ill health. So would we be wary of offering support? And that really is depends, doesn't it? And that's our depends question. We can't really answer that for everybody there. So it could be true, could be false, could be a little bit of both. So what do we mean by mental health, mental ill health disorders? So the next slide's, our first one is what we mean by mental health continuum here within it. So I'm sure that most of you have heard of autism or Asperger's syndrome being on a spectrum. And that's where there are, from very severe to relatively mild ways of actually presenting with certain disorders. So, we might have people who have absolutely no diagnoses through to people who have got a very clear diagnosis and who, to all intents and purposes, will present as if, their behaviours or what they say or how they act really are beyond boundaries that we might possibly be used to, who clearly might have a diagnosis but might not have actually gone on to have a diagnosis. Bearing in mind that diagnosis can take sometimes years for people to have from first presenting at GP or with mental health teams. So the emotional and spiritual resilience, which allows us to enjoy life and survive pain and disappointment and sadness, something which will come to us all at some point in our lives. It's a positive sense of well-being, underlying belief in our own and others' dignity and worth then. Okay. So our next slide, please, Jack. Okay. Some key mental health statistics. When I was talking about the 1 in 4 people, here we are, 45.8 million UK adults report experience symptoms of mental health problems. Now, bear in mind, we've got just over 60 million people in the UK. That's a huge number, isn't it? But not all of those are diagnosed, and some of the conditions, which we'll see in a second, can be transitory, or they can actually be ones that people might have for life or the rest of their life. Obviously, we can't talk about mental health, ill health, by sort of looking at what we seem to hear in the news quite often are deaths by suicide, where things just aren't right for people. And regardless of support, people decide to take their own lives to do that. But 46% of these have a known mental health condition. That's worth looking at these. And most of those are, 3/4 are men. Mentee. Right, can we have the next slide, please? All the statistics there. So we talk about things, depression. 280 million people worldwide have depression. And something that's very much at the fore at the moment is the last block there. Is 60% of people in the UK said the cost of living crisis was harming their well-being. So that might be something that people have been, just about on an even keel, but, we have crises in life. One of them, cost of living, could tip people over the edge into depression or anxiety about life. Okay, so what do we mean by mental ill health disorders? We've got a quick list on this one. Some of them you may well recognise. Something like neurodevelopmental disorders would include autism, Asperger's syndrome, something that, you know, is there right from the off within a person's life. But others, such as the last one, neurodegenerative disorders, are things that develop during a person's life, generally with age, or could be through trauma, or, you know, accidental cause, or with brain injury. And that would include things like dementia and Alzheimer's, which Helen is going to talk about in more detail later in this webinar. So we have a number of disorders. This is not an exhaustive list by any means within this. Okay. One thing that's really, really important is, I said at the start, that none of us are experts, unless you are by profession an expert in mental ill health. We've got to be really careful that we don't second guess or try and diagnose somebody's mental ill health. It's brilliant, you know, to get the Google out going to try and say, oh yes, they're definitely got this, or they definitely got that. We cannot do that, and must not do that. You know, it has to be properly assessed and diagnosed there. So our next slide is looking at mental health stigma in our churches. Okay. So a stigma, we all know what stigma is. It's something where people are meant to feel that they are, you know, maybe not of the norm. What is the norm? It's very different for every different individual. But it's a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. So a lot of things that stigmatise people with mental ill health, which would probably lead them not to tell people within the church that they have mental ill health. It can be very, very much a hidden disability among people, is because, you know, people just hear a word, hear a diagnosis, and suddenly put that sort of that myth, misperception about a condition, and it's really, really, you know, hard for people to then take that back once you've actually disclosed to people that you have mental ill health. It can be, depending on people around them, hard to take back or say. So a lot of that is around understanding and what can we do. So we talk a lot within safeguarding of having a church as a safe space, a safe place for all. That's generally in the context of people who have been abused, but it's actually the same context for absolutely everybody who comes to worship on Sunday or midweek, or comes to attend any events at church. That, you know, feeling comfortable and accepted in your church, you know, is really for everybody. It has to be a safe place for all. But for mental health sufferer, church is a special refuge. As I said earlier, you know, people will seek out places like churches as their sanctuary, because they hope people there will be more understanding and will be kind and supportive and thoughtful, where they can actually be an individual, not just, you know, someone who could behave differently, for instance, within you know, normal context outside of church. Okay. And bear in mind that people with mental ill health, when they actually arrive at church, they might have had a real trauma that morning or evening, whenever they're coming, to actually get out of the door. You know, as we say in the bottom part of this slide, they could struggle with everyday issues like leaving the house. Okay, it can be a very frightening world out there to some people, you know, sitting on a bus or a train, or even accepting a lift from somebody at church that they know well can be difficult for some people. So it's difficult. It's very important that we make church as safe and comforting and comfortable place as possible. So I'm just wondering, in the next slide, do we actually talk about mental ill health in church? Is it a topic that's ever preached about? Is it a part of prayer within our services? Is it something that, you know, behind the scenes people feel maybe uncomfortable for whatever reason talking about? But the Job quote at the top of the slide, my mouth would encourage you, comfort from my lips would bring you relief, is, you know, why aren't we having a culture that talks about mental health within our churches and talks about, you know, or discusses, you know, what is it that we can do, or what is it that people, you know, with mental ill health want from church or need from church? What is lacking? What can we practically do? What can we say? You know, is it something that they would want to have talked about openly? You know, just as we talk about anything else, any other aspect of our lives or church, or is it something that we all just keep really quiet about because we don't want to cause upset or anything? You know, this is something that we need to do, is have a talk with people and have a think about, you know, are we open, or are we continuing to sort of bring this idea of it's a stigma? That's why we don't talk about it, you know, just as other things in life that we would normally talk about. So how do we do that? Like, first of all, is to educate congregation. Now, within safeguarding, you know, there's a very clear want or need that's been brought from past cases reviews and from the Methodist survivor of abuse group, that say, look, you know, if we're going to actually prevent abuse and we're going to protect people within our churches and using our premises, then we need to educate people about, you know, what are the signs to look for, how can we best support people, how can we actually do this? And one thing that they will say to us very loud and clear is, we need to educate people, you know, tell them things that they might not realise or be aware of. And it's the same with mental ill health. I mean, the first one, I said earlier that some mental ill health can be very much hidden. People choose to hide it, or maybe they don't actually know that they might have mental ill health. Things like you don't look sick to people is really, really unhelpful. So it's really important that our congregations understand that, you know, we not to be judgmental. As I said before, ask and listen. So if we need to know how best to support people, actually ask them, or ask those who might be caring for them what's the best way. Or maybe we can educate ourselves by going on to mental health first aid courses, which if you Google mental health first aid, you'll find plenty out there. And also the Methodist Church will subsidise mental ill health. I know some of you watching might well have taken these courses, and very worthwhile they are too. So, next one. Part of our community as Christians is prayer. We pray, don't we? With our prayers of intercession for those that we know are ill. We pray for those who are bereaved. Do we pray for those who have mental ill health? Or is that something, again, that is left out or we don't think to? So if we as Christians have faith in the power of God to heal, then why aren't we praying for people who have mental ill health? We could pray as individuals or as a group or within service. So if we have any presbyters, local preachers, worship leaders, it's hopefully a little food for thought there. But also pray for those who support people with mental ill health. Right, you might be thinking, what are the speech bubbles around this? And think, oh my goodness, are these things we have to pray for? No, these are the absolute opposite of what we should be thinking or praying or talking about. You know, you have mental ill health because you need to pray more. That is not something that any of us should be thinking or saying within that. It's not a lack of prayer that's brought this. We're going back to medieval times, aren't we, by saying that, people have been afflicted with mental ill health because they're not devout enough. That's absolute nonsense, isn't it? Or you brought this on yourself, or you just need more faith. Okay. These aren't helpful, and they're actually very hurtful and harassing comments when you come down to the bare bones of them. So something else that's going to help rather than hinder people with mental ill health, which we'll see on the next slide, is about befriending. We all need friends. I think that's front and centre here of this slide. We all need friends. So let those with mental ill health know there's a place for them in church. It might be a specific focus. I know Helen will no doubt talk later about dementia-friendly churches. I know that some of your churches might well be dementia-friendly to do this, but also, if you have people within your churches already, within your congregations, you need to reinforce that, you are just as important to God. God loves you just as much as absolutely anybody within church, but also offering friendship for people and companionship. Okay. In the bottom right, we've got a couple of, at the bottom, so we've got a couple of quotes for people who have mental ill health, who have said that, our homes are our refuge. So when they get home, oh, that's it. We're fine, we're safe, this is our safe space. But they can be a prison. So actually coming out to church can be very much helpful, and can be part of raising their souls, quite literally, with people and with worship. And one of the reasons I enjoy going to church is to breach the isolation I live in during the week. It's my weekly opportunity to be amongst people in a safe environment. So safe environment, that's something that we need to make sure this. And the Colossians quote at the top, it's talking about compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. So be patient with friends to befriend. Okay. Now that's all very well, but it can be difficult. Go to the next slide, please. Says churches should be the most honest place in town, not necessarily the highest place. It can be difficult within churches if we're not sure, or we're very bit tentative of how best to actually be with people of all types here. If we can go to the next slide, please, because caring. Okay. Right, can we go to the next slide? Okay. But caring for someone can put a strain on carers' mental health being. Okay. So if you have people who are carers of people with mental ill health, sometimes if they're bringing the person they're caring for to church, just actually sitting on another table and having a chat with different people can just give them that little bit, even half an hour of respite. So we need to make sure that we are talking with everyone within our church and giving them an act of that, and be patient. And if someone does exhibit behavior that you're not quite sure why they're behaving in a certain way because of mental ill health, just to be tolerant and patient and understanding to do that. Okay, next one, please. Okay. I think this top one's very important. Some people actually might shy away from befriending people with mental ill health because they might be worried about what they're taking on. They might, be a person that might latch onto them, and maybe if you share phone numbers, might be getting phone calls at all times of day or night. Or how on earth am I going to cope with someone who's having suicidal thoughts? What we're going to put on the website later are a number of resources and contact details for the experts, the charities that actually will help with this, because we're not expecting our church people to be experts at all. It's more about signposting and being with, rather than trying to fully support people at home. So next one, please. Okay. So we have to safeguard our volunteers so that people within churches, you know, talked about befriending and talking with and being with, but we've got to have that very fine balance, haven't we, of not putting our volunteers or people within churches, you know, front and centre of risky behaviour. We can't ignore that. So we need to have boundaries, and that might be pertinent for pastoral visitors, for instance. You know, should a pastoral visitor be visiting somebody at home that has mental ill health that could lash out at them or make allegations against them? So how is the church going to try and support that? You know, do you arrange somewhere else, not at home, to visit with someone, or at church, go with 2 or 3 people to meet and support them within, and share support, because it shouldn't be down to 1 or 2 people within the church to try and offer support to people with mental ill health. It needs to be that larger team, so no one's feeling a burden. Okay. We have community resources that you can tap into. Google is fantastic for finding things within, as are the local health authorities and local authorities. The council sometimes can signpost you in that. Okay. Mention mental first aid courses. If you go onto the Main Methodist website and Google mental health first aid course, you'll find that they are there as little as £25 a person. They are very heavily subsidised by the Methodist Church. So it's, and as I said earlier, you know, we need to have a look at some of the resources maybe on the website that will be put up after this webinar. Okay. And I think there we are. There's our link to further resources. So if any of you have got your phones out, yeah, and you know how to use the QR code with the camera, just hover it over. They'll be able to take you to those further resources when they're on the website. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. That was really, really good. Thank you. So I'm going to be looking a little bit at the relevance of the Mental Capacity Act, also known as the MCA, and how we can use it in good practice for safeguarding. So I'll be looking at the Mental Capacity Act, which applies to England and Wales, which is a key piece of legislation that provides legal framework to make decisions on behalf of people aged 16 and over, so 16 and over, not just 18 or over, who may lack capacity in certain decisions. It's especially relevant in safeguarding, where decisions about care, safety, or sharing information may need to be made. This slide is going to look at what goes into the Mental Capacity Act, how it's assessed, its process, and its safeguards. But it's important to remember, as we state in the foundation and advanced safeguarding training, we must always assume someone's capacity. We must almost assume that someone has capacity unless they make clear evidence to the contrary. But the MCA is about protecting vulnerable individuals, but just as importantly, it's about empowering them to make their own decisions wherever possible and helping them plan ahead for times they may not be able to make decisions. Let's quickly look at the key aspects of the Mental Capacity Act. That is the definition of capacity, prioritising the person's wishes, supporting decision-making, advanced decisions, safeguards, and codes of practice. On the screen, you should be able to see the 5 principles of the Mental Capacity Act. The first is assumed capacity, which is, of course, what we talk about in the safeguarding training. Always start from the assumption that a person can make their own decisions. The second is maximize capacity. Take every step possible to support them and make that decision before concluding that they can't. As Linda talked about, you know, supporting people, that is something that runs through our safeguarding practice. Unwise decisions. Just because a choice seems risky or strange doesn't mean the person lacks capacity. Best interests. If someone lacks capacity, any decision made for them must be in their best interest. And the 5th and final principle is the least restrictive option. Always choose the option that interferes least with the person's rights and freedoms. We're now going to look a little bit more about how someone makes a mental capacity assessment. An assessment will normally be done by a professional, but the reason that we bring this up is because it's not just done by a professional like a social worker or someone from the care service. Sometimes a family member or a unpaid carer can be involved in making a mental capacity assessment because they will know that person better than a health worker or a social worker. So when it comes to safeguarding, you might be involved in assessing, because you're a family member or an unpaid carer, and assessing whether someone has capacity to make specific decisions, such as whether to accept support or allow information sharing. A professional will do a two-stage test. The first is a diagnostic test. Is there an impairment or a disturbance in the functioning of the mind or of the brain? The second is a functional test. Is that impairment affecting their ability to make a specific decision? But it's important that these two things are linked. These two stages must be linked. This is often referred to in case law as needing a causative nexus. The ability to decide must be caused by the impairment. So number 2 has been caused by number 1 is the easy way to remember that. Now, what does it mean to have capacity? How do you make decisions with capacity? According to the Mental Capacity Act, a person lacks capacity if they can't do one or more of the following: understand the relevant information to a decision, retain that information long enough to make the decision, weigh up the pros and cons that come to a conclusion, and communicate their decision in any way, whether that's verbally, whether that's with signs, or even through simple movements, such as blinking an eye or squeezing a hand, as stated in the slides. The decision must be specific. Someone might have the capacity to decide what to wear today, but not to understand complex medical treatment. So why is the Mental Capacity Act so important? The Mental Capacity Act is important because it protects people's rights to make their own decisions wherever possible. It ensures that if they do lack capacity, decisions are made in their best interests. It applies to any situation where consent is needed, from a healthcare to a personal data. Requires anyone working with those who may lack capacity to follow the code of practice. And at any time, any one of us may lose capacity at some point, even temporarily. It's something we talk about in the safeguarding training, our second group, adults who may be vulnerable. We talk about how people may be vulnerable for a long time. We also talk about how people may be vulnerable for a short time. Anyone can lose mental capacity, even temporarily. It's important to note that it isn't always forever. And that is why the law is designed with dignity, respect, and fairness in mind. So, how is this relevant to safeguarding? How does this all tie in with safeguarding? Well, good safeguarding practice is person-centered, meaning that we always start with what the person wants and what the person needs. That lines up exactly with what the MCA, the Mental Capacity Act, focuses on. It focuses on individual choices and autonomy. To be Mental Capacity Act compliant in safeguarding, we must be clear when we do and we do not have the right to make decisions on someone else's behalf. Know when it is legally appropriate to share information without consent. Balance safety with freedom, especially when decisions might restrict someone else. And the Mental Capacity Act links with many other pieces of legislation. It also, and I'll talk about at the end of the PowerPoint, how it links with our Methodist policies and procedures and how we demonstrate it in our training. But it links with, for example, the Care Act 2014, and it links to the 6 safeguarding principles that apply to, as well as the Department of Health, they do apply to all settings and all professionals, but they come from the Department of Health. And they are empowerment, supporting individuals to make their own decisions, protection, keeping those in greatest need safe, prevention, stopping harm before it happens, proportionality, responding appropriately and not overreacting, partnership, working together with other agencies, and accountability, being transparent and responsible in all actions. And while these do link beautifully with the MCA, the Mental Capacity Act, and reinforce our shared responsibility to protect while empowering, because safeguarding is everyone's responsibility, these 6 key principles, empowerment, prevention, partnership, and accountability, link with all parts of safeguarding and all parts of safeguarding practice. And it's important that we embed them throughout, not just with mental capacity. Now, it's important to link, how does the Mental Capacity Act link to the Methodist Church, to what we do? The first thing is it upholds, and it is one of the core foundations of our safeguarding policies and procedures. It is one of the key bits of legislation that make up the main Methodist policies and procedures. Also, if you are a foundation trainer or have recently done the foundation training, the third case study in the foundation training, which is just, the name of it has just gone from my head, unfortunately, links to mental capacity and deciding whether someone does have mental capacity or not, and what you should do next. But to quickly summarize what we've spoken about today with mental capacity, the Mental Capacity Act is not just the legal framework. It's a way of ensuring dignity, respect, empowerment, and they are central to everything we do. But again, it's important to remember the core principle of the Mental Capacity Act, but also the core piece of guidance that we give to you as safeguarding professionals in our training. And that is, we must always assume someone has capacity unless there is clear evidence to the contrary. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Helen Bolton, to talk about safeguarding and dementia in our churches.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to speak this morning just a little bit about safeguarding and dementia in our churches. And I know that many of our churches and church communities do offer services around those who are experiencing dementia and their carers, but it's a bit more broader information just to help us all as we go. So let's start with, what is dementia? If you could put the first slide up, Jack, that'd be great. So dementia is really just a term used to describe a range of symptoms that occur when someone's brain cells stop working properly. And it's an umbrella term for those symptoms caused by the conditions at the bottom underneath the umbrella, such as memory loss, confusion, and personality change. As you can see, there are a number of key conditions that come under the umbrella of dementia, particularly Alzheimer's disease. And for anybody who knows me well, we have a family history of one of my older brothers living with Lewy body dementia. So it's estimated that around 850,000 people in the UK now have dementia, with 1 in 14 adults being affected. And when we think about the demographics of our church communities, people are not going to be missing, not present in our churches suffering from dementia. Researchers told us that older adults living with dementia are at greater risk of abuse and neglect than those without a diagnosis, and that abuse might include psychological, physical, financial, or sexual, and can take place anywhere in the community, including our own churches. But we also know that people living with dementia may find it difficult to report abuse or to make the choices about how they would like their situations to be managed. So if we just move on to the next slide, please, Jack. Just a little bit more about the effects of dementia. And it's much more than just memory loss and misplacing things. And it can affect different people in a wide variety of different ways. It can impact their ability to concentrate and to do the things that they always used to enjoy doing, such as reading and crosswords, anything that requires a period of concentration. It can also lead to change in personality and mood. And I've heard people say that at times, the individual barely seems like the person that they were before, because they may have problems recognizing faces and get confused about time and place, and as a result pull away from social activities. There can also be a change in the behavior with confusion, disorientation, and sometimes even delusions and hallucinations. They can have a challenge with their ability to perform daily tasks because there are often physical elements to the dementia, often similar to Parkinsonian type movements. There can be difficulty communicating, judging speeds and distance, and even cravings for specific types of foods. Everyone's experience of dementia is different. And as I was, next one, Jack, sorry, as I was preparing and thinking about this session, I, yet again, ended up watching the Inside Out movies with my grandchildren. And it led me to think about how it could also reflect some of the experiences of those living with dementia. So for those of you who don't know the story, the films tell the story of Riley, a young girl adapting to change and whose experiences become memories that are stored as coloured orbs and sent into her long-term memory every night. So emotions like joy, anger, and sadness take turns piloting Riley's mind, leading to some severe and abrupt mood changes. So as I say, I saw that it could be seen as representing the challenges faced by those living with dementia as well. Just as in the film, Riley's core memories define her personality and shape her sense of self, similarly, those who are living with dementia have been shaped by their core experiences in their lives, including moments we may never have known about. And it's important to remember that those memories are still there and can often appear in unexpected ways. And in the film, Riley's memories are constantly being reorganized and discarded by the brain's cleanup crew. In dementia, however, this process becomes jumbled. Critical memories can fade while seemingly random ones appear very, very vivid. And the film also offers us valuable lessons for understanding how emotions, memories, and routines shape our loved ones' lives. So just as Riley navigates challenges with her emotions, those living with dementia are on a journey that requires patience, empathy, and flexibility. The film teaches us that even when someone's personality seems to change, their essence remains. Memories allow us to mentally time travel and relive the past in the present. And the character of Joy in the film frequently recalls past memories of pleasant events in order to make Riley happy in the moment. And I put a quote on there too from Paradise Lost. We'll move to the next one. And again, sticking with the theme of Inside Out, we'll have a look at, if you can just keep clicking, Jack, they're there. We'll look at some of the key characters within the films that represent a range of emotions that may impact not only those living with dementia, but also those who care for them. And the first character on the screen, representing loneliness and loss, is called Bing Bong, and he's Riley's imaginary friend created during her early childhood. He was Riley's best friend for a long time when she was young and as a toddler. But in the film, he's soon overtaken by new memories and new emotions. And he's seen in the film as really missing this time he's had with Riley and is desperate not to be forgotten. And we see sadness, we see anxiety, we see nostalgia and a casting back to the days maybe many, many years ago. We can experience fear. We can we can experience anger that we're going through this or that our loved ones are going through this. Some may experience embarrassment about the behaviour that someone experiences. And we mustn't forget that even within the experience of someone living with dementia, there can still be moments of huge joy and pleasure and love. So, how do we manage people attending our churches and our church communities who may be experiencing dementia, particularly in those earlier stages? Well, we know we can feel out of our depth around people's behaviours, and what we need to consider is, are we safeguarding people, or are we actually managing risk at a bit of a lower level? And that might be a risk of, or a risk to, or a risk from. And just the next slide very quickly shows, brilliant, thanks Jack. There may be a risk to the individual themselves. There may be a risk to their carers and those who love them, and there may be risk to other people. And in managing risks, we need to understand and be aware of why these issues may be occurring and at what stage in their dementia journey an individual may be at. We need to complete risk assessments. We know we do all the time in our churches to ensure access is safe for everyone, but particular things need to be considered when we're working with people who are experiencing dementia, and we may need to make a number of very reasonable adjustments to accommodate them. However, we know that we can pass over that threshold into safeguarding if situations get worse, and that can include things like verbal abuse or language being used that is not appropriate, but over which people often have no control. Behaviour can often appear threatening and challenging, or even experiencing unwanted or inappropriate touch, which the individual themselves does not see as inappropriate, and can result in actual physical abuse. And I remember working with a lady when I was in health who was on one of the elderly care wards who was experiencing dementia, and I don't think there was a shift I didn't come home without scratches on my arms from where she used to dig her nails into me. But she had absolutely no idea of what she was doing and the harm that she was causing. So the next few slides we'll look at are going to help us to consider how we can safely include and support those living with dementia and their carers to engage in our many and varied church communities using 4 aspects of our church life. So our church buildings and the environments we're in, our worship and activities around our worship, providing pastoral care, and also developing local networks. So if we look at the first area, our church buildings, remember we need to always ensure that we've had a full accessibility audit completed for all of our locations so that people can safely access our buildings. We need to consider the signage, making sure it's clear, that the font is simple and a good contrast with, and also has symbols or pictures on that will help people to recognise what it's indicating. The sign should be fixed to the doors that they relate to and not onto a wall nearby. They need to be at eye level and at key decision points in our buildings. Remember that signs for toilets and exits are particularly important, and toilets should be accessible and well signed, and sanitary ware of a contrasting colour to the walls. We need to consider the lighting. Are our entrances well lit, and do they make as much use of natural light as possible? And are we trying to do our best to avoid pools of bright light and deep shadow, which can cause difficulty in people negotiating? We need to ensure our floor surfaces are flat, have a matte finish and are not slippery. Any changes in level are clearly marked. And that we are managing areas where there may be trip hazards or even uneven surfaces, and maybe avoiding people moving through those areas. It's useful also to create some landmarks so that people can navigate around the buildings, and that might include things like plants or pictures? And particularly, are there things, familiar features that identify the space as a church? So when somebody walks into our buildings, is there a cross or something that clearly indicates they're coming into a church or a faith building? And do we have quiet and safe spaces for people who may need to withdraw from our main church areas or services? And we're talking about dementia, but obviously these things are things that we can do that cover a whole range of other issues people may be experiencing. So we'll go on and have a look at our services and activities on the next slide. Thanks, Jack. And we have to think about how people who are living with dementia might understand and access our services and special events. So are things amended or adjusted to meet their needs? Will the contents of our services, particularly the music, the language and any activities, be familiar to those who have attended church at some point in their past? Do our sheets and our notice sheets have illustrations so that there may be a visual focus for someone with dementia? Do our intercessions sometimes include prayers for those with dementia, their carers and family members, in the same way that Linda mentioned intercessions for those experiencing mental health issues? And do we provide sufficient flexibility within our worship that will allow those with dementia to express their spirituality in the way that best suits them, whether that be through communion, within a praise service, or even a solitude period during worship? Can we explore ways of making the coffee after services more inclusive for people with dementia? And do we offer perhaps specific dementia-friendly services, such as a dementia-focused songs of praise? And we know many of our churches do, but it's a challenge there for all of us, as within society, we're seeing an increasingly kind of people are living to a much older age, and we're going to see far, far more of these kind of requirements than we've seen for a long, long time. In this next slide, we're looking, Jack, if we can, thanks, perhaps for considering having some specific guidelines in place for those who deliver pastoral care in homes for people. Perhaps you need to consider whether you and your church need more dementia awareness training. Do you or could you in your church provide any support to carers of people living with dementia, or deliver any different forms of ministry in local residential homes? And also, do we know where to signpost people to for additional and expert information and support? Again, we often talk about, could we identify champions with a specific responsibility to consider how we give a good welcome for people living with dementia, and are our premises used to host events for those living with dementia and their carers? Or even, may we be able to help with things like making memory boxes, activity quilts, sensory bands to have in church, which will help people experiencing dementia to continue to be engaged within our worship. And last but not least, as you can see, we're coming to the end of Mental Health Awareness Week, which we've been through all this week. And from Monday of next week starts Dementia Action Week. And I would just ask all of you just to think, is there one way in which we can consider how we can make our own specific churches that little bit more appropriate, a little bit more welcoming for those experiencing dementia and for their carers? It can be a challenge, it can be draining, but it can be also be hugely joyful, sharing experiences with those we know who experience dementia. We know that often people do not have the same length of lifespan as other people. And I myself can't believe that we're almost coming to 2 years now since we lost my brother to Lewy body. So yeah, I am pretty sure that most of us out there have had some experience of this. So how we support one another is so important. And as Linda said before, I think that my last slide just says again, I've talked about a lot of things. A lot of the things I've talked about, I've taken from other websites, etc. And I will make sure that all those resources are available for you. So you can go out and check out a little bit more about what it means to be a dementia-friendly church, and identifying some resources that will particularly help if you're looking at dementia-focused services.
Great, thanks. It's good to be with you all this morning. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Alison Holtz. I work for the Learning Network across the Connection, and I'm specifically linked to the North West England district. All that we do in our safeguarding is rooted in our learning and development. So we don't just send you off to do this safeguarding stuff without support and development behind that. So I'm going to invite you to do something quickly. Can you grab a pen and a piece of paper? And in the middle of your piece of paper, can you draw a stick person or a cartoon of yourself, or just write your name if you don't want to draw in the middle of your paper? And around that person, I want you to write or draw some of the people you connect with in your church life. So it might be people you meet at church. It might be people you run a group with. It might be people at circuit events that you see. It might be people you volunteer with. It might be that you write individuals. It might be that you write groups of people. So if you're a local preacher, you might want to just put one person to represent the local preachers. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Nobody's going to see your drawing, so it doesn't need to be an exact thing, but just to give a flavour of the range of people that you connect with in your church life. Keep doing that if that's what you're still doing, but look at the people that are starting to appear on your page. One of the underpinning things of safeguarding that we take really seriously in a Methodist context is that safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. So if you look at your sheet, safeguarding is the responsibility of all of the people on that sheet. So how can we best support and develop and resource them? So we're going to use the map that you've created there of people to think about that now and look at the variety of learning and development that's available for them. So I'm going to encourage you as we go through to circle some of the people. We're going to circle different people as we go along. If you're the kind of person who likes to colour code things, you might want different colour pens as you're going along. But first of all, look at your sheet. This is the longest list you're going to get. Circle anyone who might be a minister, a lay employee, work with children or young people, work with vulnerable adults, a circuit or a church steward, a local preacher or worship leader. I told you this was a long list. A pastoral visitor. Maybe they're a circuit or church safeguarding officer. Maybe they're a member of district staff. Or maybe they're a young leader. Quite a long list, that one, and the longest one we're going to get this morning. Those people will all complete the foundation module. The foundation module is the basic building block of our safeguarding training, and all those people are invited to come along and do the foundation module every 4 years. They refresh every 4 years, and the material is refreshed every 4 years. And together we explore how we create a safer church culture and enable people to understand their role in this. This is one of 3 building blocks that we have for our safeguarding training, and this one differs slightly in that we invite everyone to come to this. Not everyone has to come to this, but anyone can come to foundation module training. So do always bear that in mind, that people are warmly invited to come to that training. Okay, go back to your sheets and have a look again at your people. Circle anyone who is a safeguarding officer, maybe a member of DPC or the district safeguarding group, a minister, an active minister, including active supernumeraries, somebody who's in a leadership role in children, youth and families, paid or voluntary, or somebody who's in a leadership role with vulnerable adults. Maybe they're a lay pastor, a local preacher or worship leader, a circuit steward, or maybe they're a leader in a pioneer or MP context. All those people will complete the advanced module. So this is the next level of our baseline training and explores further the Methodist Church's commitment to safeguarding and all of those individuals' specific roles within that. So it really starts to unpack what is your role in these leadership roles in terms of safeguarding. And again, people refresh this every 4 years. Just to note that if you do advanced module training, you don't have to refresh your foundation module training. You just refresh your advanced. But every 4 years, we ask people to re-engage with this particular module of training. Just to note as well, and we haven't got a slide for this next one because it's not even got a front cover yet, but there will be a senior leaders training, which will be the 3rd building block, and that'll be available from the next connectional year for those who are district chairs, senior leaders within the connectional team, the president and vice president of conference. Those people who are in those senior leadership roles will explore in a lot more detail what it is to be a senior leader in a safeguarding context. So those are the basic building blocks that we base all of our training around, but there are many other things that support us. So go back to your sheets and circle anyone who might be a local preacher or worship leader. There might be a minister. There might be somebody who's just got a real interest in theology and exploring the theological basis of our commitment to safeguarding. Maybe they're a house group leader or a small group leader. In 2021, the Theology of Safeguarding report went to the Methodist Conference. And this is a great report that enables us to look at why it is we do what we do. And off the back of that came God Welcomes All. God Welcomes All is a 4-session study guide which takes the report and unpacks it for people. There's discussions, there's film clips, there's activities to take part in, and it includes a facilitator's guide. And I really recommend for all those people that we talked about when you were circling a minute ago, them to engage with this material, because it really helps us to ground why it is that we take safeguarding so seriously as part of the ministry of the Methodist Church. Okay, back to your sheets again. Circle anyone who works with children and young people, anyone who's a pastoral visitor, a lay employee, maybe people who are involved in chaplaincy, whether that be in a formal basis or a more informal basis. Linda's already touched on the area of mental health, and it is something that's really important within our church life, that we take seriously the mental health of the people that we work with, that we support, that we meet in our faith contexts. So I'm going to explain 2 or 3 different parts of the mental health first aid training that is available. Within the Learning Network, my colleague Breck Seaton takes a lead on the mental health first aid training, and you'll see Breck's email on the bottom of that flyer there. And there are a number of things you can do to support your churches and circuits around mental health first aid. One of those is to encourage people to train as mental health first aiders. So it might be in a circuit, in a particular project, so a pioneer project, for example. It might be there's a particular youth project where you think we really need somebody who's got the skills around mental health first aid, in just the way we would have the conversation about have we got a physical first aider in this setting as well. This is a 2-day course, which the Methodist Church hugely subsidises. So I think this one costs about £60 and it would normally be about £300. So it's been subsidised by the Methodist Church so that we can, across the connection, encourage people to train as mental health first aiders. This one that you see advertised at the moment is an adult mental health first aid. There is a separate youth mental health first aid, which concentrates on specific areas around youth mental health. Again, contact Breck if you want to know more about that. But not all of us will want to train as mental health first aiders, but we might want to know a bit more in order to enable us to think about the things that Linda was talking about earlier. So there are mental health awareness sessions, which are 2 evening sessions, which can be done on Zoom or can be done face-to-face, which enable us to think about the issues around mental health first aid. And again, if you want to think more about that, maybe in your circuit or your mission area, you'd like to put that on, or maybe again, you've got a project where it would be helpful for all of you to think through that. Contact Breck and she will be able to put some stuff in place for you around that. Okay, back to your sheets. Circle all of those who are pastoral visitors. Maybe those people who support Messy Church or toddler groups, you know, the people who are there to talk and to make the coffee and do that kind of thing. Also your door stewards, your welcome stewards, circle them. I want us to think for a moment around our support around domestic abuse. Increasingly in a church context, we notice issues around domestic abuse. And that's because we see people on a regular basis, so that if there's a change in somebody's behaviour, in the way they present, we will notice that. If somebody's missing unexplained for a long period of time, we will notice that. It's also because the things that were being said earlier, that people see church as a safe space. So somebody may be in a domestic abuse situation, or maybe who recognises that a friend is in that situation, will see the church as a safe place. They can bring their concerns. So we put in place a number of things around domestic abuse awareness. So you will have seen the posters like this and the stickers that you can get from Methodist Publishing. Many of you will have been involved in the domestic abuse awareness training that, again, Breck runs within this district. And Breck is happy, again, to go to circuits or to mission areas and to run the domestic abuse awareness training. To be aware as well that in November, Methodist Women in Britain will be putting a particular focus around this area, and we'll be doing some work with them and putting on 2 or 3 domestic abuse awareness Zoom sessions, and all those details will appear in the district newsletter once we have those more sorted and in place. But it's really important that we engage with this particular area, particularly for those people we talked about earlier. Okay, back to your sheets. Circle anyone on your sheet who is in a language fellowship group. So the church that I am attached to has a Tamil fellowship community who worship as part of our wider church community. It might be that you're part of a language fellowship group. Circle those people. In the Northwest, we've been piloting some work around how we make foundation module and advanced module more tailored to those who are in fellowship groups. Myself and Helen have worked closely with Jasmine Debadasan, who is another member of the Learning Network in this district and who takes a lead on this area. So if you're thinking, actually, we do have a language fellowship group attached to our church, part of our worshipping community, and we'd like to explore how we can deliver the safeguarding training in a more bespoke way, either contact myself or contact Jasmine, and we will be able to explore that with you. But we're really keen that we make this training really applicable to the places that it comes from. Okay, back to your sheets again. Anyone who is a pioneer and involved in a New Places for New People project or a Church at the Margins project, circle them. As I mentioned with the language fellowship groups, we're looking to make our advanced module and our foundation module more bespoke for different groups, and there's conversations around that happening with pioneers and MP people. But also we run a surgery for pioneers and for New Places for New People leads and for Church at the Margins leads, to work with the district safeguarding officers to have conversation to explore what does safeguarding look like in these very new ways of being, and how best do we support and learn from each other. So we've got a surgery coming up in June, and if you'd like details of that, drop me an email and we will make sure you get the date and the time for that. So they happen on Zoom for 2 hours, and it's a place to drop in and talk with the district safeguarding officers about how best we support your particular projects. Okay, just go back to your sheets for a minute and look at your stick people. Most of you have probably circled all the people on your sheet, but some of you may have people who aren't circled. But safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. So what about those people we haven't circled? There might be a number of people. I'll give you a couple of scenarios. It might be someone like Beryl. Beryl has been an active member of her local church all of her life. She's now in her 80s, but in her late 70s decided for various reasons to take a step back from church life. So she's still there every Sunday, sat in the same pew probably, and she's always there to welcome people, but she doesn't do all the roles that she used to. So she doesn't attend any safeguarding training anymore. But people trust and respect Beryl, so if there's a concern, it's likely they might talk to Beryl. Beryl doesn't receive any safeguarding training at the moment, but safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. Or it might be Sam. Sam has 3 children and a busy working life. Sam's been coming to Messy Church for a while now and is now starting to explore their own faith further. Sam's attended no safeguarding training and is new to the Methodist Church, but because Sam's very well known in the local area, because Sam's at the school gate and is involved in Messy Church and is in the park with their children, because of that, people feel like they know Sam when Sam comes to church. So it might be they talk to Sam if they've got a concern. Safeguarding is everyone's responsibility, but Sam's not received any safeguarding training. So how best do we support Beryl and Sam and other people like the ones that you will have on your sheets? Here's just a few ideas on how we could do this. The first one is Safeguarding Sunday. Safeguarding Sunday happens in November of every year, and the next one is the 16th of November. It's spearheaded by the organisation 318, and they have lots of resources available to support Safeguarding Sunday. The best way to get everyone engaged with our ministry around safeguarding is to talk about it from the pulpit, or to talk about it in your pioneer context as you're leading worship, or in your youth group as you're leading a worship time. Talk about it when everybody is attentive. And Safeguarding Sunday provides the resources for us to do that. At the moment, you sign up to find out about Safeguarding Sunday this November. However, the last 2 years' resources are already on the website. So if you think, actually, I don't want to wait till November, I want to do this at another time, there's loads of material on there to support you. You can use the whole thing, and there's lots of little bits of videos and things you could use. So let's talk about that with everyone, so that everyone, including Beryl and Sam and all the other people, hear this message of how important safeguarding is and what we can do to support that. The next slide is from the foundation module and has on it an image from one of the activities where we look at practice. So some of the things you'll see on there are really good safeguarding practice. Some of them are dubious, to say the least, and some of them we might have some questions about. What I would encourage you to do is, if you've got a foundation module trainer in your local church, ask them to lead this activity as part of maybe your AGM, maybe at the end of worship, maybe at a meeting where a number of people are there. Ask the foundation module trainers to lead this. If you haven't got a foundation module trainer in your local church, you will have in your circuit somewhere. So borrow one from another church for a little bit. And together with everybody there, explore what safeguarding is and what our good practice might be. And just this short kind of 10-15 minute activity will enable people to do that. I would encourage you, alongside this, to give everyone a copy of the small card. It's called the Quick Reference Guide, and you can get it from Methodist Publishing. And the Quick Reference Guide has in it some top things around to say to somebody if they come to you to disclose an instance of abuse, things to be aware of, and it has a space in there to write the contact numbers for the people you need to speak to if you have a concern or if somebody is disclosed to you. We give it to everyone at Foundation Module and all the other training, but actually if everybody had that with the key contact details they need on it, that would be a really great way forward. So just a few ideas of how best we can support those individuals. The thing I said at the beginning is so key. Safeguarding is everyone's responsibility, but we don't want everyone out there feeling unsupported in that. So all those things we've talked about are there to support people in that responsibility of safeguarding. All that information we'll make available to you, but it's all on the Methodist Church website in the safeguarding pages as well. And if you've got any questions that you want to come back to, you want to follow something up further, then please do drop me an email. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my section of the webinar. My name is Julie Patterson, and I'm the District Safeguarding Officer for the Cumbria Mission area. So first of all, let me apologise for not being there with you in person today, but I really hope you enjoy what I've got to share with you today. I'm going to be covering the safeguarding updates, what's new, what's next, and what you need to know. On Safeguarding Sunday, thousands of churches from diverse backgrounds and traditions from across the UK joined together to shout out about safeguarding to help protect vulnerable people. The initiative, set up by 318, invites community to come together to share our safeguarding journeys and highlight and celebrate all the good work that we do in safeguarding, which is often unseen. Defending the rights of vulnerable people is integral to the Christian faith and teachings. And sadly, as a church, we haven't always got this right, but we have a chance to change that. The theme of this year's Safeguarding Sunday on the 16th of November will be announced later in the summer, and the Safeguarding Sunday website has resources to help church plan and prepare for the day. You can register now online for a free digital resource pack. And of course, just because we have a designated Sunday for the campaign doesn't mean you have to stick to that day. You might choose to run smaller events during the week before, which is also Adult Safeguarding Week, or dedicate a different Sunday to the theme. The day isn't as important as the message itself, so please do what works for you. There are many reasons to get involved with Safeguarding Sunday. Churches who take part in the event can expect to see a greater positive awareness and understanding of safeguarding amongst church members, an increase in the number of people feeling able to talk about their abuse for the first time. More volunteers come forward for safeguarding roles and to help with children and youth work. There's an increased number of people completing safeguarding training and criminal record checks. And the number of safeguarding leads feeling supported in their role by the church is greater. Next, I have a call for action. The Connectional Children, Youth and Family team are examining and reviewing their safeguarding related resources. Specifically, they're looking for any gaps, any amendments and updates that might be needed. The aim is to create a directory of sorts so that everything related to children, youth and family work is in one area. It would be really helpful to know and have a copy of any related resources that you have created or adapted, such as information leaflets, handbooks, practical guidance, or anything that you may have produced in relation to a query, such as guidance to help put policies into place and into practice. Areas might include things such as social media, risk assessment, safer recruitment, or anything that simplifies putting policy into practice. These should be related to safeguarding work with children, young people and families. And it would be helpful if you could also forward any resources that you have from your other organisations, whether statutory or voluntary. Please just send any documents to Karen's email address. If you think it would be helpful to talk to her about any of the above, please contact either her or me. Next, some good news. There's been an increase in inquiries relating to teenagers wanting to volunteer within the church. But with this in mind, there are some things we need to consider. Because the volunteer is classed as a child themselves, there would need to be an appropriate adult who would be responsible for their welfare. An adult over 18 should be present all the time they're volunteering, so they're never left alone in sole charge of any aspect of the project. A consent form should be signed by the child's parent or guardian, giving them permission to volunteer. The parent or guardian should also be asked to provide appropriate details, like emergency contact details and medical information. When completing the overall risk assessment for the activity, you should mention any volunteers under the age of 18 and specifically consider which activities they'll be undertaking. You should aim to obtain 2 references from anyone volunteering. Who acts as a referee would depend on the context in which the young person is volunteering. For instance, if they are known to the church, it would make sense for a minister or a youth worker to write the reference. However, if they're volunteering through a scheme like the Duke of Edinburgh and are not previously known to the church, then a reference from a teacher would be the most obvious. If they're going to be working with children or vulnerable adults, they may need to undertake some safeguarding training. Depending on the age of the child, you may need to consider whether the foundation module is appropriate, or whether individualised bespoke training would be more appropriate to ensure they know how to recognise abuse and what to do. This could be done by way of a briefing by the event organisers. You can apply for an enhanced DBS certificate, if the role is relevant, for anyone over the age of 16. However, if the volunteer is under 16, this is not an option. Next, I'd like to talk to you about Julie's story. Julie's story of forced adoption as a baby from a mother and baby home in 1962 was released in time for Mothering Sunday and is available on YouTube. You are strongly encouraged to watch this. However, please be aware that the content includes some distressing themes. Julie, now in her 60s, shares her mother's experience of forced adoption, often also called coerced adoption, and of emotional abuse by the Methodist women running the home. This may bring up some painful memories for people, and they may be in contact with you. We are extending an invitation to those who have been affected in any way through experiences related to any Methodist church run home, and if they'd like to speak to somebody, please make contact with the safeguarding team in the Methodist Church who work with victims and survivors of abuse. An official apology has now been published and is available on the Methodist Church website. With this in mind, here is a reminder of the resources that are available to help you work with survivors and victims. The policy and guidance for working with victims and survivors within the Methodist Church in Britain outlines the types of support we can offer to victims and survivors and what they can expect from their contact with the Methodist Church. There is also a supporting short guide to the document written directly for victims and survivors themselves, summarising the full document. The Reflect and Respond study guide, published in January 21, is a 4-week study programme for small groups in churches. Based on the 4 themes of our calling, it provides case study material, theological commentary, and questions to challenge our thinking. There is an accompanying leader guide available, and along with this, a supporting survivors of abuse leaflet aimed at supporting churches support survivors. All of these resources are available to order from Methodist Publishing. Another useful resource for working with victims and survivors are the May I materials. These can be found on the Methodist Church website and have been written by a survivor. They highlight for churches the importance of considering the impact of unwanted or unsolicited touch within churches. Next, I'd like to talk to you about a reintroduction to the Methodist Modern Art Collection. A small watercolour Annunciation by the controversial artist Eric Gill was removed from the touring collection and its website in 2017. But in 2022, discussions resumed about the future of the artwork. It was decided to ask the Methodist Survivors Advisory Group for their views on what should be done with it, given Gill's sexual abuse of his daughters and his incestuous relationship with his sister. These discussions resulted in the survivors wanting the artwork to go back online and preferably on display with a full explanation of Gill's history. From the start of the consultation about the exhibition, the survivors were also clear that they wanted to feature the lives and creative work of Petra and Elizabeth, the daughters who were abused by Gill, so people would know of their skills and talents. In 1989, Gill's sexually abusive behaviour towards his young daughters, Betty and Petra, and his incestuous relationship with his sister and his other sexual experiments all came to light with the publication of a controversial biography by Fiona McCarthy, leading to growing unease about displaying his art. The knowledge of his behaviours and how it impacts viewers to see and understand Gill's work and museums, galleries and churches have been considering how to display and interpret his work anew to acknowledge his darker side of his character. One of the survivors on the group stated, "Discussing sensitive topics such as abuse can be challenging. Traditionally, people have tended to avoid the subject, conceal it, or overlook the perpetrator's actions by focusing on their positive accomplishments. As survivors, we saw Gill's painting as an opportunity to change that narrative. Instead of hiding it or selling it, we wanted to use the artwork to start conversations about abuse, acknowledge the victims, confront historical abuse, and discuss its intersections with faith." She also said, Gill's painting Annunciation feels unsettling, especially considering the art's history. It depicts Mary as small and vulnerable before an overpowering male angel in a claustrophobic bedroom with a single small window. Contrary to the Bible's message for angels to calm those they visit, this piece invokes fear. Another survivor stated, "Ownership of this piece is a moral challenge to the church, and for too many years the church has hidden from the challenge of moral accountability in responding to situations of abuse. In having to deal with this picture, the church is having to deal with its own legacy of avoiding the issue of abuse." Next, I'd like to talk to you about adolescence and incel culture. Adolescence is a critically acclaimed 4-part TV series which aired on Netflix in March, sparking much debate across the country between parents, in families, in schools, and even in Parliament. The plot centres around a 13-year-old boy who is suspected of murdering a female classmate. It explores themes of misogyny amongst young men and boys and the radicalisation of teenage boys by the manosphere. The manosphere is a collection of influencers and content creators, such as the accused rapist and human trafficker Andrew Tate, which pushes sexist ideas onto young men online. The primary feature is that they are in opposition to feminism, and the most extreme of these groups are incels. An incel is an involuntary celibate male, shortened to incel, with female incels called femcels. The term was originally coined in 1997, and the mostly online subculture often promote violence towards women, with mass killer Roger Elliott, the perpetrator of the Isla Vista killings, is often revered and referred to as a saint by the incel movement. Incels are classified as an extreme ideology and can be managed by the police through their Prevent Counter-Terrorism division and strategy. Adolescence creator Jack Thorne addressed the Women and Equalities Committee on the 29th of April, along with fellow executive producer Emily Feller, as the government faces calls to do more to tackle extreme content being served to young people on social media. Keir Starmer has given his backing for the TV show to be shown in schools and in Parliament. Like many subcultures, incels have their own vernacular, with adolescents highlighting the use of emojis having different meanings. These emojis will change, their meaning will change over time, and certainly after the airing of the TV show, they will have adapted and changed. But just to give you an idea of what we learned from the TV show, the symbol, a red pill, this symbolises an awakening. It says, "I see the truth." It is a call to action by the manosphere. In the manosphere, those who have been red-pilled see the world as it really is, understanding the so-called real nature of women's behaviour and dating preferences. Next, we have the dynamite emoji. This refers to an exploding red pill, meaning someone is an incel. The 100 emoji refers to the 80-20 concept that states that 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. The kidney bean is used by somebody who self-identifies as an incel. Then we have the different coloured hearts. So the red heart denotes classic romantic feelings. Yellow says I'm interested. The pink one says I'm interested but in a non-sexual way. The purple one is used to denote that someone is horny. And then the blue one is for friendship. Should have actually missed off there, or perhaps you can't see it. The black emoji is often used just as an alternative to the red for aesthetic reasons. So it doesn't denote anything dark or malevolent. And an orange one says you're going to be fine. It denotes warmth, enthusiasm, or love between family and friends. And although the adolescence programme did not cover this, emojis are often used in the drug subcultures as well. So I've put on here as well some of the common ones used in the drug world for you as well, such as the horse emoji denoting ketamine, and the aliens, these ones here, the alien, the skull and crossbones, these denote MDMA and ecstasy. This is useful for anybody who works or comes into contact with young people in their line of work, or indeed as a parent or carer. And finally, I'd like to talk to you about the newly formed District Safeguarding Group, which will convene for its first meeting on the 19th of May. We have appointed an independent chair, Hugh McLaughlin, who has a background in social work, safeguarding and research, as well as being a member of the Methodist Church, having served as a circuit safeguarding officer for a number of years. The group will meet 3 times a year to support safeguarding across the district and circuits, and we have sought to ensure representation across all the mission areas and a range of safeguarding experience, both within the church and externally. And in line with the recommendations from the District Safeguarding Audit, members of the Connectional Safeguarding Committee, we now have a survivor representative who can ensure the survivor voice is heard at all levels and within all our documentation and training. The work of the DSG will be underpinned by the national DSG standards, and a priority for the group will be to ensure that we have processes in place to allow us to evidence where these standards are met and where additional work may be required. There will be a requirement that churches and circuits continue to work with their DSOs to ensure up-to-date information regarding things such as training and DBSs for audit purposes continues to flow. The work of the DSG will be reported annually to the District Policy Committee. Thank you, everybody, for listening to my presentation, and again, apologies for not being there in person.
Okay, I'm hoping you can all hear me. Thank you very much to all our speakers today. I think it's been an interesting morning. I hope you have all found it to be the same, and a very useful way to spend your time on this sunny Saturday morning. Thank you so much for your engagement in today's safeguarding webinar, and of course for your dedication to safeguarding overall. This gathering provided an opportunity to come together and be part of a community that works to support and empower people in our churches. We have developed our knowledge and awareness of key issues and concepts, and the plan is that in the future we will do much more of these so that this can continue. I think the essence is community and learning together and sharing experience and practices. We've learnt more about the importance of mental health in our church context and how ageing in particular can impact on this. The church can really make a positive impact for older people. This is linked to social inclusion and support and a renewed sense of purpose in some cases. I think it's important that we encourage open dialogue about mental health in order to reduce fear and create a positive, supportive environment. Something that's resonated with me recently and today as well, whilst we've been listening to the presentations, is that irrespective of age, sometimes it can be hard to feel vulnerable. This is something that I certainly can appreciate. Now, just imagine if you have other factors affecting you, such as issues with your memory, that you are struggling to understand or make sense of, and yet you still don't want to allow yourself, or you don't feel able to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You might feel confused, scared, embarrassed. I wonder how many people in our churches and circuits are feeling this right now. Something else that's been a key interesting point from this morning, the subject of adolescence. So I have watched Adolescence, and a couple of things came out of that for me. I was taken aback at actually how little I do actually know about youth issues these days. I forget I'm not a youth anymore. You know, I am not young anymore. And quite honestly, I am completely out of touch. So it was an absolute eye-opener for me. If you haven't watched it, I really recommend you do. It provides a real insight into many issues that I certainly wasn't fully aware of. And it really did open up conversation and debate in our family. I think issues of parenting. We have I personally have two young children, and it's the issue of trying to do the right thing. Gender ideologies, emojis. I had no idea about some of these. Education. Many of you will know that I come from education. My last post was in a multi-academy trust, and I have seen some of what was going on in that secondary school. This is real. This is happening today. And I think it really did just create the opportunity to talk about things like this. It's happening in our everyday lives. Okay, so I think the key thing to remember is that your commitment to safeguarding in our churches and circuits is crucial for creating a safe and supportive environment for everyone. So let's all continue to keep learning, stay informed, and be vigilant and diligent in our efforts to protect all those across our district. I just wanted to add at the end that we will create a webinar section on the website where we will share resources from today. So do look out for that coming in the future. And I'd just like to introduce our Chair of District, James Tebbert. Unfortunately, he wasn't able we had some slight issues with the technology earlier in terms of trying to access the Zoom. He was here and ready. Unfortunately, the technology did not allow him to join in. So I just wondered if you wanted to mention anything or have a few words, James, at this point.
Thank you, Heather. It is really good to be with you. I know at this point, at least my screen's well synced. The syncing isn't working between words and visuals. So I hope I'm coming over all right to you at least. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's good to be with you. Can I thank again those who've prepared and delivered today, but also to thank you for engaging and for all that you do, those everybody attending and participating, for all that you do to take your part in this responsibility for safeguarding that is all of ours to share and to engage in. Thank you. May I just offer a final prayer for us all? Let's pray. Let us pray. Loving God, forgive us when we get it wrong, when anyone distorts their own needs in a selfish and especially an abusive way. Or forgive us when we're not sufficiently sensitive or inclusive, not sufficiently careful or attentive or engaged in safeguarding, when we're not appropriately, respectfully uncertain, when we don't care well enough. Lord, forgive us. Lord, help those who are vulnerable, hurt, even devastated this day. For all sorts of causes, reasons, contexts, collective hurt where the innocent are blasted by bombs, or in individual situations where victims are trapped in the abuse of their abuser. Help those who cannot see, reveal to challenge those who cannot see that they have responsibility for their infliction of hurt and pain on others. Whatever the risk of, or to, or from, loving God, be present, challenge, comfort as required. help us to do the same. Lord, help all those who are vulnerable, hurt, devastated this day. And Lord, help us to play our part to make the world, our communities, our churches safer places. We thank you for all that we have heard to inform us and encourage us this morning. We offer you our responses, our learning and our endeavouring to embody and enact. Help us to be those who are challenging and comforting, including and caring. Help us to be people who are safe and enable others to be safe. Lord, help us. And loving God, be with and bless those for whom we are concerned this day. Be with and bless us all. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.